Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Welcome to the Final Boss Podcast. I'm your host, Final. That's what we're going to say. And he's the sensei, Big Mike. Yes, sir. This is episode number 43, people. Episode 43. We are here. And as we're approaching the end of this first season, it's been a joy. It's been a blessing. Oh man, I can't tell you how much of a joy and blessing it has been for not only for myself, but my good brother on the other side, who man, we share so much and we have so many things in common. And tonight on my brass tacks, I would like to talk about something that as I always say, is near and dear to my heart. Everything is near and dear to my heart. So before we get started, as you know, this is for entertainment purposes only. Tonight's brass tack is going to be about labels, but most importantly, trending labels. Labels like narcissist, labels like empath. You can't be both. You can't be a narcissist and you can't be an empath at the same time. But most importantly is that we have to stop putting these labels on people. We have to stop putting labels on what people believe in. That's their beliefs. That's their personal belief. People are allowed to have that. People are allowed to not like you. It's the world we live in.
It's
Not
okay.
intended. It's
It's
okay.
okay.
It's okay. Listen, man. It's okay. But the labels are unnecessary. And I believe in my whole heart, in my opinion, they stifle our growth as a people, as the human race.
It kills
You can
dialogue. You kill dialogue.
you kill the dialogue, you kill the relationship. There's no growth. And we're stunted at a level that we can't get past. You know, one of the big things that um you hear, and it's the R word. I'm not gonna say it on here, but is it really what it is? Or is it a social distraction?
Oh. Oh.
It's a social distraction.
If
It's
you're
to
distracted, you're
impede
not
our
effective.
growth.
Yep.
Absolutely, man.
hmm You're
Look,
controlled if you're distracted.
look, me as a black man, there are black people I don't like.
And me as a white man, a lot of white people I don't like.
Exactly. There's people you're not going to like for whatever reason. Why do you need to put a label on it?
Yes, you don't put a label.
You don't need to put a label on it.
No.
Stop the labeling. It's not
I'm all
necessary.
about this. Okay. If you're here, you born
you're,
here, you're a
you're
citizen
here.
here, guess what you are? You're American.
Yeah,
Period. That's it.
period. That's
Uh,
it.
there's- Anything else is a label designed to put you in a box so you can be categorized and you can be controlled. Why do you want
And
to be controlled?
and if you don't believe that you're all just an American, trust me.
Hmm.
Let something happen to this country
Ooh.
where we're forced to come together.
Oh, and them Dewey.
Hear what I just said.
hmm
Let something happen to this country that we're forced to come together.
On 9/12.
Yeah,
On 9/12, who were we?
we
Who
were
were we?
Americans. We
We
were
were
Americans.
Americans on 9/12. That's what we are.
After Pearl Harbor,
What
after
were we?
Harbor, we were Americans.
Yep, absolutely. Because that's what we are.
That's what we.
This is our country.
So that's my brass tacks tonight. Let go of the labels. Oh, one more thing. I want us to have an episode on mental health. Mental health is near and dear to me. As you may know, I'm a veteran, and statistically speaking, a veteran commits suicide every 6 minutes. every 6 minutes a veteran commits suicide. We're out there suffering in silence. If you hear me, please reach out, email us, inbox us. Stop suffering in silence.
You're not alone.
Please. You're not alone.
You are not alone.
You're not alone.
Mm-mm.
We're here. And you may not think that you may think you're the only one going through it. You're not. We're all going through it. I'm going through it. Don't suffer in silence. There are people who are trying to reach you, people who love you, who value you, who are there for you. You have to let them in.
And who need you.
And who need you. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
We need you.
as veterans, we understand the concept of mission.
Yes. Mission
and if you're
first.
needed and you have a mission, you have
Mhm.
a purpose.
You have a
The
purpose.
purpose can outshadow the demons.
Correct.
So you find your purpose,
Mhm.
find your reason. The demons don't have a place to hide in that. There's no place to hide in that. Mission first, mission accomplished.
Mission first.
That's what we
Mission
do.
first.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to suffer alone.
Nope.
Email me at info@thefinalboss podcast or inbox me on any of the social media platforms. You can also the same with Big Mike. Find him on any of the social media platforms. We're here for you, especially now. It's the holidays. Don't suffer in silence. We love you. And with that being said, we're gonna get ready for tonight's show. Man, episode 43. Surviving a nuclear blast attack. Surviving a nuclear blast attack. You're probably wondering if that's even possible. Everything's possible. Everything is possible. There's no definitive or there's only one absolute. You will die one day.
Oh, we're all gonna die.
But how?
There you go.
It's up to you. So with that being said, we're gonna start the show. And man, it's gonna be a tense one. It might get a little dark, but we're here to give you the masterclass on the possibility, allegedly, how to survive a nuclear blast attack. With World War III and all these different conversations going on, this is what the show is about. We're bringing you information that nobody else is bringing you. And
Right.
tonight we're bringing
Who's
you
talking about it? No one
we're
talks
talking
about it.
about it. We're talking about it. So the floor is yours, sir. How would you like to start?
Well, just like in real estate, it comes down to location, location, location.
Absolutely.
If you want to survive, what's the number one thing you got to be aware of? Location.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's certain areas and places that you're much more susceptible. I mean, heck, if you're right next to a military base, that's great on one aspect, but in nuclear, it might not be so great. If you're in the DC area, yeah, I can pretty much tell you that may not be the best place in the world to be, just because the nature of what is there, and if attacks are going to hit, where they're going to be concentrated. So it comes down to, okay, location, location, location. What places are susceptible, what places aren't. So the places that are less susceptible to nuclear fallout, because it's not just the explosion, the initial explosion, that has a radius.
Right.
It's and those people die right away. And guess what? If you're inside the radius, hallelujah, baby. You have nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
Your preparations, you did fine. You were in location and you got taken instantly. So that's not the instant people were worried about. So if you say, well, if I'm here and a nuclear explosion hits, I'm within the 10-mile radius, I'm going to be, I'm going to be cooked. Fine. Then your prep is done. But if you're looking at or in places where that's less apt to happen, as far as the immediate cooking of the chicken, so to speak, you'd say, where's that happen? Where's less likely? And so less likely are places that are mountainous because they have more natural terrain. You have the ability to have underground caves and things of that nature. See, earth is super important and ground is super important when it comes to protecting from a blast, right?
Right.
So location, location, location. I can't say that enough. And you can easily go look that up and say what areas are most susceptible in the scenarios that we have currently, and you do your homework. So this is one of those call to action. Go do your homework. Find out where do you live and what is the chances of if a nuclear attack hits, what are the chances of you being within the radius or what are the chances of you being second wave or third wave? So once you know that, then you say, okay, I know where I am and I know that I can prepare based upon that.
Mm-hmm.
Because you need to know what you're up against. Look, if you live
Absolutely.
on the coast, you're more susceptible to things like if an explosion goes off in the ocean outside of the city by the coast, you're going to have a
A
tsunami
tsunami.
come through.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. It
Yeah.
might not be the nuclear blast. Hell, it
Yep.
might be the tsunami. If you're
Mm-hmm.
in an area that's susceptible to earthquakes and a nuke goes off nearby there, could it trigger some earthquakes? See what I'm getting at? You have to look,
Absolutely.
where are you and what are the repercussions of nuclear explosions?
Mm-hmm.
And then you also have to look at, okay, what types of nuclear explosions are we worried about? Are we worried about intercontinental ballistic missiles or are we worried about small dirty bombs?
Right.
See, there's a whole different animal. You don't think, oh, it's coming from the sky. This is what we were taught in the 1950s and 1960s,
Right.
right? Everybody thought the Russians are going to nuke us. It's going to come from the
Mm-hmm.
sky. It's going to be missiles.
Mm.
Okay, but what about suitcase bombs
Or tactical.
or tactical?
Mm-hmm.
So if you understand that those things are possible, heck, it might not even be a nuclear explosion. It might be a dirty bomb.
Yeah.
And its job is to spread radiation,
Mm-hmm.
not to have the impact of an intercontinental ballistic missile where it blows a big hole in the ground, but it is to create a massive radioactive flood, which is going to destroy all life in a certain area. See, now those are the ones that you'd be more concerned about. You see,
Absolutely.
those are more possible than the big ones.
Mm-hmm.
In today's world, with the countries who are enriching uranium, you think they're trying to go after the big bomb? No, they're going to make
No.
some little tiny dirty bombs.
Yes.
That's the whole thing. And tiny dirty bombs, they get through. You see, they get through the
Mm-hmm.
borders. They can get in place and set off at a certain time for maximum effect.
The
So,
borders, the ports, things of that nature. Yes.
absolutely,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
100%. So I
Mm-hmm.
personally am more concerned about those than the
Then
missiles.
right. Correct.
Because look, every country in the world who has big nukes, I'm going to call them the big nukes,
Mm-hmm.
they all know if you start nukes, we do nukes. And guess what? What's left? Nothing.
Nothing.
So the chance of that particular scenario occurring is a lot less than a small group that doesn't give a damn. They want to make a name for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And what do? They set off a dirty bomb. So that's the ones that you'd be more concerned about. The ones that go out and pollute or destroy your water system. Right? So if I have a great basin of water and I nuke it and the entire thing is radioactive, guess what I just did for everything downstream? Boom, effect.
Correct.
So that's the things I would be seriously concerned about.
Yeah.
And so you say, okay, it's rare. There's a phrase that we always spoke about in the military, which is you prepare for war in the time of peace.
At peace. Absolutely.
It is better to shed a gallon of sweat in peacetime than an ounce of
Than it
blood
is.
in war.
Mm-hmm.
So you prepare so that when the time does come, you're prepared. It minimizes the impact and effect of what's going to happen if you are prepared.
Correct.
Training, muscle memory,
Muscle memory.
everything in place. Do I have the types of supplies that I'm going to need? And look, don't just take my word for things. Go out to the CDC. Hell,
Yeah.
go to the CDC and look it up. What are they telling
Absolutely.
you as a minimum, not even for nuclear, but just as a minimum types of supplies
For
you
survival.
should have for survival?
Yeah.
If we had an inclement weather pattern, if we had a tornado come through, do you have a scram kit?
Mm-hmm.
And a scram kit gives you the things you need. What do you need to survive? What's the number one thing you need to survive as a human being? Water.
Water and food. Water, food, shelter.
Right. So water's your number one. I can't survive X number of days. I can go for a while without food. I can starve, but I sure as hell can't go without water.
Correct.
So you ask yourself, okay, what do I do for water purification? This is where you study up, learn, gather your resources. If anything else you do, you prepare for the ability to purify your water. They have the little tiny straws you can buy, the Guardia straws, that you can take one of them, which is the most simple, basic straw. You can take it and go to some water and drink through the straw, and the water's clean coming to you. You won't get bacterial, you won't get all this nasty infection stuff from impure water. Then they have one that's even better. It has a screw top that you can put a liter bottle of water to it and screw it on the top of the liter bottle of water, and now you got a bottle of dirty water you're drinking is clean.
Wow.
And so that's super easy to get, and they're $20. You can buy them at Walmart. You can buy them at Walmart.
Oh, I didn't know that. I can check that one out. I have the straws, but the bottle, I need to check that one out.
That's the liter bottle. You can plug any bottle to it. So now you can go out and gather a bunch of water that's not really clean water, but you have that water with you that you can now drink. So that's super, super important.
Yeah, absolutely. You know? That's pretty cool.
Absolutely. It's cool. So that's a big, big deal. So that's your immediate. What do I do in the immediate? I have to have water. What else do you need in the immediate? I better have a first aid kits.
Oh, speaking of which, question for you, since you just brought up first aid kits. When it comes to first aid kits, what specific first aid supply should a person include?
Okay, this is going to come down to several factors. Okay, and I'm going to fall back on my military days. Every person should have a minimum of a certain kit on them. And the key is you, in any situation. You stop the bleeding and restore the breathing. Those are your two biggies, right?
Right.
So a Band-Aid's not going to cut it, is it?
No, not at all.
No. And you have to, as a minimum, everybody should have in their own personal kit. A personal kit. You should have small, medium, and large Band-Aid type stuff. You should have, we used to call them the big bandages, which was a big pad, and then it had the cloth attached to it, so I could put that on a big cut and tie it and stop the bleeding.
The gauze for tourniquets and stuff. Yeah.
And then now after that, then you have tourniquets. So those are the things that you have to be considering, but it also comes down to what's your skill set, what's your skill level, what's your training, because it's not going to be good for you to have a surgery kit if you're not trained in that or have somebody nearby you who is. Don't have a bunch of IV stuff if you don't have the ability or the knowledge how to use it.
Don't
get me wrong, it's not terrible to have it, but that's not the kit for you.
Right.
So you're going to have to understand what are your capabilities and build your kit based upon your capabilities. And again, it comes right down to this. Don't believe me. Go do your research. There's a ton of research out there. And look, go do AI. Go chat GPT it and go, hey, I am a fairly skilled individual with basic first aid skills, and I need to create for myself a first aid kit that I could keep nearby that would suffice in most emergency situations. What should I do? And it's a conversation you have with it, and it's going to give you a list. Get these items. So the first part is you have the bag. Your bag has to be one that can hold all the equipment that you have. Okay. And then once there, you start filling your bag. And there's things that are expendable and there's things that aren't expendable. Expendable items are things that have an expiration date. So if I have ointments or creams or drugs or meds or whatever, they expire. But that doesn't mean they're throw them away. It just means that they're not as effective as they were.
Exactly.
But as far as first aid and staying alive, that you stay alive. There's a medication you can get that I think that everybody should have, and not enough of us have it. It's called Silvadine, and it's for burns. So if I get a burn and I don't want my burn to get infected, because what's going to kill you in a bad situation? Infections are going to kill you, right?
Right.
So if I get a burn and I need to put something on my burn to prevent an infection from happening, or you get Silvadine. And you go Google that, look that up. How do you get your hands on some of that stuff? Have it in your first aid kit. Because if you're it's not one thing to keep a wound clean, it's another thing to keep from getting an infection. Neosporin doesn't cut it for everything.
Right.
That doesn't protect against infection. So start understanding and learning what are the items I'm going to need for my
Mhm,
first aid kit. And that's a
mhm.
separate item from my immediate food water. So I have short term, my straw. I have a medium term. They got little ones you can do a pump, hand pump. You can do a gallon, so I can take care of a bunch of people.
Right.
And then from there, I can do distillation. Have the equipment that I can do a campfire distillery. So I have the copper lines. I have a
Mhm.
bucket of water. I boil the water, and what comes up through the top, the vapor, and what goes into my on the other side when it cools, pure distilled
True.
water.
Yep, yep, yep.
So, those are the things you think about. How do you gather the necessary tools for you to
Mhm.
create that? And I'm not talking about creating in the country. Heck, you could create on a little gasoline powered or propane powered camp stove a little still to create drinkable potable water. You could do it off of a campfire. If you
Right.
had some wood, you need to burn some wood. You could
Mhm.
have your container, heats the water, boils the water, and it just does its thing. And ta-da, you got clean water on the other side. Water's
Absolutely.
your number one. I
Mm.
cannot speak enough upon having a potable source of water. It is water in today's world is more valuable and more precious than gold and silver.
Man, I was just
Period.
watching that. Yeah, I was just
It,
watching a podcast the other day. They're saying water is going to be the new. It's going to be the new black oil, and
it's
people
been
are
that way. We've
getting.
been talking about since in the 70s
Yeah,
that
yeah,
water was going to be it.
yep. They're buying rights to water.
Look, there's certain areas you live in, you
Mhm.
are not legally allowed to capture rainwater.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is true.
Rainwater. If I
Yep,
captured rainwater and distilled it, do I have something I can drink?
absolutely,
If I capture rainwater and I have a garden, can I feed my garden with the rainwater?
absolutely,
And can I grow my vegetables for myself? But
absolutely.
what happens if you're not legally allowed to capture rainwater?
What if that you're not legally allowed to have a garden?
Then you move.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I'm telling you, go look that up and look up
Yeah.
your area. Here's another
Yeah.
call to action.
Yep.
Go look up right now where you live. Is it legal to capture rainwater?
Mhm.
And if they say no, it's time for you to find another place to live.
True.
Well, that's a lot of work. It's a lot of no, it isn't. If things
Mhm.
get bad and you're not legally allowed to capture water because they're going to come and get you for capturing water to keep yourself alive, in Houston, you have a problem.
Houston, you have a problem. Man, you know, we talk about water and different supplies. So these supplies and survival kits are pretty much ambidextrous depending on the situation. What this situation we're referring to may call for different elements, like certain medications. I've been doing some research, and there's such thing as radiation sickness,
Yep.
and it's said allegedly that radiation attacks the thyroid first. So you have to get some medication that will protect your thyroid from the radiation, because if it attacks the thyroid first and that leads into absorption, and that's where you absorb the radiation the most and create all types of crazy cancers, but allegedly. But what are your thoughts on that?
We used to use iodine tablets. We used to have iodine tablets was all the time. And if something was
Yeah.
going down, we threw iodine tablets in our water.
Hmm.
So go look up that one
True, true,
and
true.
then throw some of those in your kit.
Hmm.
It's all about having a diversification of your kit,
Right.
and when it comes to food, there's have you ever heard of pessimist? I can't remember. I can't say it to save my life. But there was an old food that the folks who were traveling out west would make this stuff in these bricks, and it would last forever,
Mm.
and it could sustain you. So learn how to create some of the old school food supply sources. See, not everybody has access to MREs. MRE is a military term for a meal ready to
Meals
eat.
ready to eat.
Not everybody has that access to that. Now, an MRE has about what 3,000 calories per.
Per.
Yeah,
It's
so it's a
dead.
lot of calories in that thing. That should be able to last you 2 days of
Yeah.
survival. One
For
MRE
real.
can cover you for 2 days.
Hmm.
but most people eat 2 of them in a day or 3 of them in a day. So it's
That's
crazy how many
crazy.
calories they eat. But what I'm
It's
getting
true.
at is there's old school technology that you can create old
Mhm.
school, long lasting shelf life food sources that you can then have nearby your kit. And if you have these food sources and understand how to create those, and you create them almost out of nothing. So if you have meat that's going to expire or go bad, you use some of that, mix it with other things, and suddenly you now have this food source which can have a shelf life of a month or 2 or longer.
Or
And now you
longer.
create these
Mhm.
bricks, and now you have this food source. So now what happens is you now have a I'm not saying it's going to taste good or be wonderful and delicious like having
That's
a
not what
full,
it's there for.
it's
It's for
there to keep
nutrition.
you
Period.
alive,
Yeah. Keep you
right?
alive.
So
Mhm.
you gotta have, we talk about water is the number one. After that, you gotta have to, I say number 2 is your first aid kit.
Yeah.
That's your most important second item to have, because you
Mhm.
have to be able to, deal with wounds and injuries
Mhm.
sooner than later.
Sooner
Because
than
if
later.
you let
Yeah.
one little cut can kill you in a bad situation.
True.
All right. And then you have to start talking about, okay, what kind of meds do you want to have nearby?
Mhm.
Well, it's nice to have ibuprofen, that's fine. Tylenol, that's fine. But what about antibiotics?
Right.
What about things that can help you, or like the creams you need to put on a wound for wound dressing?
Mhm.
You got to start thinking about, I can't just go to the store and get this stuff. I can't just go to a doctor and get this stuff. I need to start stocking things which are going to be able to medium term, not short term, but midterm keep me going.
Mhm.
Right? If I'm not allergic to penicillin, you better believe I need to have some.
Right.
And if I am allergic to penicillin, they have other meds that are sulfa based that you get your hands on that stuff and you
Mm.
have it. That way you don't get an infection, because infection is a slow way to die.
Uh,
So after that, you now start looking at bigger items. Okay, so
mm.
now I got my water squared away. I got some short term, midterm food squared away. I now have my first aid kit. I got those. Those are my big 3. After my big 3, we're looking at, okay, what else do I need to have? I need to have protective gear. I need to have, especially if there's radioactivity going on, because that's what our main subject is on this one, not just a natural disaster, but radioactivity.
Radioactivity.
You
Mhm.
better have some kind of gloves so this kind of radioactive dust doesn't get on you.
Mhm.
Look, go and get yourself. They're everywhere. They're easily able to get them. And it's called an NBC mask, and you can get all kinds of levels of them. The newer ones are just a mask with a screw-on filter to it. So I don't want to be breathing in bad stuff. And if I have to go through an area where there's radioactive dust, I really don't want to be breathing that stuff in. So you have a mask, and you have an NBC mask for everybody in your house, and you fit them and you test them. They work. I have extra filters for them. You have these things on standby, and then you have gear. The most simple gear is rain gear.
Right.
Rain gear keeps off a lot of bad
Love.
things off
Mhm.
of you.
True.
So, I'm not getting this radioactive rain that falls on me and soaking into my skin. I got rain gear, which pushes it away.
Mhm.
So, start to talk about those things.
Right.
Your protective gear is important. Another thing is a radio. And you say, well, what about a radio? They got a ton of solar powered, hand crank charge,
Mhm.
shortwave radios. Because if things get crazy, you know who's going to be talking? It's not going to be the AM FM radio station. It's going to be the shortwave broadcast. So you can broadcast across the globe.
Right. Now, question, Mike. Since you mentioned these short range radios, if there was a nuclear incident, and they typically, the blast radius is, like you said, is 10 miles or something around 10 miles. The EMP, that, because you have the blast and the heat, then you have the nuclear one.
Electromagnetic pulse.
Yes, the EMP, the electric magnetic pulse. How far out do you know the range of acceptability for to make those radios work from the origin point?
Typically, range BMP, nuclear. Believe it or not, I'm looking this up real quick.
Oh
Tens
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
It's
By all
tens of
means.
miles for that.
Okay.
High altitude, meaning it's one thing to have a nuke on the ground.
But from the air.
From the air, that's a whole other thing. Now we're talking
Yeah, I read
hundreds of.
about that.
It goes up into the winds, the high
Hmm.
altitude winds, and spreads across the whole globe. The whole globe can be covered.
Wow.
A nuclear detonation at 30 to 100 miles of altitude can cover a region the size of a small state. 200, 300 miles altitude could affect most of the continent of the U.S., parts of Canada and Mexico.
Man.
The higher altitude, the larger the area.
Wow.
Then you have your non-nuclear EMPs. Have you ever heard of a Tesla coil?
No. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, well, guess what they can set off? An EMP.
Yep, you're right. You're right. You're right.
So it's a few hundred meters to several miles, depending on how big this thing is.
Okay.
Okay. Solar. You ever heard of solar flares?
Yep.
They disturb radio communications, don't they?
They do.
Yep. And so there's a lot of factors regarding EMP as to how far it is, how far they can reach. How long can an EMP last? That's always a good question, isn't it?
That's a great question.
It's not just how big. Oh man, this gets technical now. They got E1 phase, E2 phase. So what happens is that it depends on what it is. So if you have unshielded equipment, now I'm going to say the difference between shielded and unshielded. If I have an AM FM radio in my hands and it's just in my hand and an EMP comes by, it can fry the circuits on that. Zap. That piece of equipment's no longer any good at all. But if I have that wrapped in metal, shielded,
or Faraday bag, yeah,
or Faraday bag, or something of that nature, it's protected the electromagnetic. Guess what's going to happen? Microchips aren't fried. It could survive an EMP, but that means preparing and having an area where your electronics that are going to be post nuke are stored. But I know post nuke, my shortwave radio and my other stuff like that, I can get it out and crank it up. So
people, that means that a lot of your cars are not going to work.
That's why you have a diesel pre-1980s, no electronics.
I'm looking for a old diesel Benz from the 80s. Those things run like a tank. No electronic components.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of military vehicles are prepped to be EMP proof. So we talk about having this Faraday bag and having this equipment. Now we have to now talk about, okay, what's about communication? How do you communicate? Because information is power.
Right.
So if something happens and an area gets affected by nukes or a nuclear explosion of one form or another, and there's an EMP and it takes out a lot of communication equipment, this means your cell phones aren't working, cell towers aren't working, all of that regular communication, we have the internet, all those things will be down because the equipment that runs them are all going to be affected by the EMPs. So then how do you communicate outside of this platform? How do you do that? So now you're looking at old school communication, right? I told you shortwave radios. So that if somebody's across the globe, because the way radio wave works and bounces through the atmosphere at certain times of the day, you could be in Florida and be talking to Nova Scotia. And if somebody's outside of the blast range, they might hear news or be able to tell you what's going on or have information for you because they're outside of the affected area. So communication is going to be super important. Super important. So because we have to talk about communication, it's super important. We've got short-term considerations. Now we're talking a little bit more midterm considerations. That's why your radio and protective gear is so important. Time, distance, and shielding is the biggie. So let's talk about it's going to happen. You're in an area, you already know it. Hopefully you know where you live. If there is an incoming warning, certain places have shelters. They have fallout shelters, they're called. Hell, in Spokane, Washington, the VFW was built in a bank because they had gotten the building from the bank. And in the bottom, underneath, is a fallout shelter.
Right.
Underneath it. So underground. So Many airports have fallout shelter areas. Subways have fallout shelter areas that you can be protected from the immediate blast. Another thing you want to get your hands on, period, end of story, stop, if you're concerned about this stuff, is a Geiger counter. Because if you don't know something's radioactive and you go into that area, guess what happens to you?
Now you're radioactive.
Now you're glowing in the dark.
You're glowing in the
So,
dark.
I mean, having a Geiger counter, here we go.
Mhm.
Now we're talking about, okay, we got our short term, we're going to survive the first couple of days. Now we're starting now talking about a week or so later. Now I'm leaving my shelter that I had that's protected, and I need to find out as to where am I going? Is it glowing?
Right.
And
Question
you got
for
to,
you.
yeah.
Because you mentioned shelter. In this incident, or allegedly, what makes a good shelter?
Earth,
Earth.
concrete, thick walls,
Mm-hmm.
not exposed to the elements. Underground is your best friend,
Gotcha.
period.
Period. Underground.
Because it's protected from the immediate blast,
Right.
and then the radiation doesn't go through the 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 feet of ground. So those are your big considerations.
Mm-hmm.
So once you move away from your immediate, this is my kit. This is my understanding of what I have, my first aid kit, my protective gear, my family's protective gear. You have a individual first aid kit, and then you have a family first aid
First
kit.
aid kit.
See the
Right.
difference?
Yep.
My first aid kit that I carry on me is so that if I get shot or cut or whatever, I can deal with the immediate life-threatening situation. My family first aid kit's a bigger kit, which has all the meds. All the antibiotics and
Mm-hmm.
all the things. You have a suture kit so you can sew somebody up if they get cut.
Right.
All that stuff. Okay, cauterizing. You have to have the ability to cauterize. You got to burn. So if somebody gets a finger cut off, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Finger got cut off.
Yeah.
Now what?
Yeah.
How are you going to keep them from bleeding out?
Bleeding out, or yeah.
Cauterize it, burn it. So
Mhm.
you have to have cauterizing stuff. You have to have sanitary equipment, right?
Right.
So now we talk about, okay, my short term is dealt with. What's next? Next is you have to start talking about how do I know about finding sanitation needs, my sanitation needs, and my first safe supplies. How do I know where my supplies are coming from? Are they safe? Now you can only store so much. And
Right.
if you store so much, it has a shelf life and expires and all that. So you have to understand, what are the goals? What are your goals? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
In a nuclear situation, to be completely frank with you, my goal is I want to go out in the first blast. Because everything I've ever read about or learned about is that anybody who's been exposed to nuclear radiation is a very, very painful way to die.
Right.
Slow, inevitable, not pleasant.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to go. Oh, I see the bright light. Here I come, baby. But if you plan on surviving that because you live in an area where you're less susceptible to it, then that's where you're taking the heavy precautions and protect your equipment.
Mm-hmm.
You need to study and learn. How do you learn about survival techniques? You're going to have to get the books, like the Back to Basics books, basic first aid books, paper.
Yep.
Paper is not affected by EMP. Paper has knowledge. I can't maintain all the knowledge in my head, but by God, if I've got a book which tells me how to do it, I can read that book and know how to do it. It's like old school YouTube.
Yeah.
So I would be gathering all this knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
and knowledge is power. So if I've got a big first aid kit, that's great. But if I don't know how to use it,
what good is it to you?
What good is it to you? And there are lots and lots and lots of books that are available that are pretty easy to get a hold of, which can help you in basic diagnostics, basic first aid, basic health care. I wouldn't necessarily in those situations be depending on doctors because they're not going to be available.
No, no, no. You're all. This is
You're on your own.
you're on your own. So you got three parts the nuclear blast. You got the blast wave, you have the thermal radiation, and nuclear fallout.
And then surviving the aftermath of all of that.
All of that. Yeah.
Because the initial could have taken out the water supply.
Correct.
Could have taken out the power grid.
Yep.
Here we go. Now, okay, water supply is tainted, power grid's tainted, taken out.
Mm-hmm.
How do you survive in that situation? And that's what you do. You have to understand if those things are gone, no lights, no power.
No power.
How do
no
you survive
lights.
with no power?
In that situation, in my own personal kit, I have solar panels for recharging devices and even flashlights and things of that nature. So I have that ready. I have a solar power radio ready. I have solar powered panels available for recharging any of my electronic devices that may survive
If they wrapped.
if they're wrapped or in a Faraday bag. Yeah, if they're protected,
Mm-hmm.
I have that in place. But if those things aren't protected, they're fried. You can forget it. So, how do you move forward?
Well, how do you move forward? Right, because now it comes down to now you're safe and protected, but everybody else isn't. And guess where they're coming? They're coming to your house.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you're safe and protected, and you did all the right things, and you're taking care of your family. And now, people that didn't prepare,
They want
and
what you have.
by the way, Disney did a movie on this, didn't they?
Did they?
Disney do a cartoon? Yeah, you talking about the grasshopper and the ants?
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Well, the ants prepare all winter long, all summer long for the winter, and the grasshopper doesn't do diddly squat. Now he wants to survive in winter, comes to hang out with the ants.
Oh, I've seen that a long time ago. I know what you're referring to now.
Yeah, well, guess what? Disney told us what's going down.
Yeah.
Because that's the kind of stuff that's going to go down.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's one thing to survive immediate. It's one thing to survive a couple of days. It's a whole other thing to survive weeks or months.
How long do the effects after the initial blast? What's the timeline on the effects of those?
Look. You heard Chernobyl.
Yeah.
You still can't go there.
You can't go there. Still can't go there.
Yeah. So it depends on how far away you are, how bad the contamination is. That's why you have a Geiger counter.
Right.
The effects can be longer than your lifetime.
Yeah. True. Hundreds of years, if not, and thousands possibly.
Yeah,
depending.
it just depends on what it is. There's zones that are so hot, you just don't go there.
Yeah.
Again, that's one flavor.
Mm-hmm.
So when you talk about this subject of the nuclear thing, like we talked in the beginning, you have the big nukes and then you have the little nukes. Little nukes, smaller impact, smaller area, smaller radius. If you can survive, get out of the area where it's contaminated, go somewhere where it's not, because it's a small nuke. So therefore you go someplace else, move, be ready to do that. You see what I'm getting at?
Absolutely.
Be prepared that you might not be able to stay where you are if it's a contaminated area. If you can survive it long enough to get out, know that you're not the only one, and it's going to be a dangerous journey to go somewhere else. So now you have to start having your plans and contingencies. Now this is now where you're talking about a lot of folks get into the survivalist mode, and it's a whole industry. Heck, there's people that are building survival camps in nuclear silos that are abandoned nuclear silos.
Absolutely.
They took the missiles out and they're now building an area they can survive in.
Right.
If that's your prerogative, consider that. How much do you want to prepare for that scenario? Because you can go from a little bit of preparation to a lot of preparation. I say err on the side of caution, but at the same token, don't let it become your life.
Right.
Because I know folks who've been preparing for this stuff since the 90s. And and it takes over their life. And that's not a good place to be because you're so focused on that, you're not focused on living.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where that, having some faith comes into play.
Correct.
Don't get me wrong, don't be an idiot. Prepare your equipment and your stuff you need,
Mm-hmm.
like the CDC tells you. Everybody should have it. Look, I was raised on a farm, and what do they do on farms? You have a year's supply of food at all times. So if you have a year's supply of food at all times, and then I don't care if things go bad and I don't have a food supply. Guess what? I have my own. I get a year's worth.
Right.
This is why we do canning. This is why you have your gardens. This is why you do all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But if that's not your life, if that's not what you do, then don't think long term. If that's not in your purview, don't think long term. Think a little more short to medium term. Think of, I want to make it a couple of weeks. Then I can get somewhere else where there'll be supplies, there'll be this, there'll be that, there'll be ways to recoup and rebuild.
Right.
So don't focus on the hunker down year-long survival. Focus on the shorter term.
Mm-hmm.
If that's what your purview is. And always remember this: the most important investment you can make nowadays is not in gold and silver, because you can't eat gold and silver. But boy, I'll tell you what, you can trade bullets.
Absolutely.
Look, I can take you a couple of bullets and trade you for a piece of bread or a couple of eggs.
Mm-hmm.
You got chickens at your house, I don't, but I got some bullets, I can trade you.
Absolutely.
And they're small enough to see the value. You can't, a big bar, even an ounce of gold has a value that's so big. How do you break it down to something smaller? Even silver, it's too much value for a direct relationship. And who's going to want it?
Right.
I don't care about your piece of silver that you've got because you got all this gold and silver. I don't care about that. But I do care about, you got some bullets? Good, because I can go hunting if you have bullets.
Survival.
And it's
Food,
about survival.
shelter.
It's food and shelter.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And then having the materials, the understanding, the knowledge, the books to help you. If you don't have the direct knowledge, look, you can easily, you ever heard of Habitat for Humanity? Folks, go volunteer for those folks and learn how to build a house. You can spend a week or so with those folks volunteering, and you know how to build a house now.
True.
You start out not knowing nothing, and you get skills.
Yeah.
Skills are important.
Skills are definitely important.
And there's a thing called tiny homes. Back in the day, they weren't tiny; they were homes. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Go back through some of these old towns and look at some of these old houses, and what do you see? Tiny 1-bedroom houses that house 8 people. They had 1 bed in there, and people slept on the floor.
Floors. People slept on the floor. True.
Okay, so you don't need a big house.
No. Mm-mm.
But if you learn how to build small, your house gets destroyed, you can scrounge up some materials, and guess what? You can build yourself a shelter and keep the rain and cold off of you.
Absolutely.
But get the books.
Yep.
And we talked about it in previous sessions. Get the books. Those books are going to save you if you ever get in a situation, because you're not going to have internet, you're not going to have Google, you're not going to have AI, nothing that's going to be available. The only thing that's going to be available to you is books.
Books. So for right now, people, for your call to action items, right now, to be prepared, you should have a survival kit. You should have survival plans. Some of your resources that are readily available to you right now are the FEMA website, the CDC website, and look for guidelines on nuclear preparedness. Go out there and start getting prepared now, because there's a lot of conversations about it, and it's not about if, it's about when. When it may happen. And what we used to say in the military is better to have than to not. So start looking into these things right now. as a call to action, start getting mentally prepared and start getting some of these resources. And because we're just giving you the breadcrumb, we don't know anything. We're not smart guys. So we're just giving you breadcrumbs, right? And like I said before, this is for entertainment purposes only. But the information's out there. Go look into the information. Some of the things that Big Mike discussed in the beginning, from your survival kit, you're going to want to seek permanent brick shelter or underground shelter. And from there, you go into survival mode. Your water resources, your food. From there, you want to make sure that your protective equipment you get to a place where it's safe. You want to come out of that protective equipment, because if you were located within that area, that protective equipment is now radioactive. So you want to put that in a plastic bag. It's dirty.
It's dirty.
Get rid of it, and you want to make sure you shower, get the radioactive dust or whatever off of you, so you can move forward. But that's the call to action, and that's pretty much a summary. And man, there's a lot of references and resources out there, and it's just like and paper books.
EMPs do not affect paper.
Correct, sir. Correct.
And you should have a notebook.
You should. Everyone
and
should
pencils
have
and pens and all this kind of stuff.
All that good stuff
should be part of your kit.
Mm-hmm. And an EMP protective bag. For your devices. Go get that now.
Devices you're going to need. And you take that radio we talked about, that most important communication device, that radio, the ham radio, the shortwave radio.
Right.
And you make sure that radio is in one of those bags. If nothing else, if you don't have any, I don't care about cell phones, they're going to be dead anyway. But you can take that device and put it in that bag, and you can have that information or that ability to hear what's going on in the world.
Absolutely.
And then not just that, in your book, you should already have printed out some of the frequencies where things commonly are. So you can go dialing into those frequencies to know where things commonly are.
Good point.
It's one thing to have a radio not know nothing about it. It's a whole other thing to know, okay, on here, I can know this band is for this. Dial into that, and I'm expecting to hear FEMA typically broadcasts on that one. So you start gathering the resource to have the knowledge of. It's like having phone numbers, okay?
Yep.
Start writing this stuff down in your book. Get your radio, get it, play with it, and now while things are happening, dial into things and write that down. Okay, I heard this here on this station. This here. I start writing this stuff down. At least you have a reference point to start.
That's a great point. Great point, Mike. Listen, folks, this isn't about scaring people. This is we're giving you the information because the conversations are out there, and I want to present it to you on this platform because this is what we're about, man. This is what we're about, and make sure that you go out there and you like, share, and subscribe to the channel, to all of the social media sites where we're delivering you this podcast. We thank you for your support. We thank you for your support. But we have to get the word out. We have to get the word out. There are things that are happening in America right now that are actively affecting our security.
Ask the people you know around you. You want to do something?
Yeah.
Ask everybody you know. Hey, do you have a emergency first aid kit? Do you have an emergency scram kit? Do you have an emergency kit of food, water, and the basics that the CDC tells you you're supposed to have? Do you have that? Right. Ask the people you know around you, because if they don't have it, guess where they're coming? Yeah. They're coming to you. So say, look, get your own, okay?
Yeah. And not only that, it's a good measure to start having conversations with the people around you.
And they say, well, I got a tourniquet, and I got this, and I got that. Okay, good. Well, I mean, we got different stuff.
Right.
Hey, I just found this, and I found this supply at this place over here. They had this really cool, and there you go.
Right.
You know, for folks that go camping, turn that into something viable, because your
Absolutely.
camping skills are huge.
Huge.
Because that's what this becomes. It becomes a big extended camping trip.
That's basically what it becomes. Yeah. Yep.
I mean, you could easily go out there and do a bunch of homework on, camping. You don't have to do it for any survival stuff. If you want to learn the cool, easy way to get stuff done, start learning about camping. Because camping covers a lot. It covers
does cover a lot.
sanitation. It covers this. It covers all these things. And folks who go camping on a regular basis have that skill set.
Yeah.
They know, man, I should have had that. I should have had that sleeping bag. Boy, I tell you what. And I should have had that poncho that I put over top of the sleeping bag. So when the rain got through the tent, my sleeping bag didn't get wet.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, just that kind of basics. Hell, just go get some camping gear.
Okay.
You're going to be so much more prepared than everybody else because you got camping gear.
How about how to start a fire?
Right.
The basics. We're talking about the
basics.
basics. How many of you, of our viewers who are watching us right now, know how to start a fire?
Without matches.
Without matches.
Or
with
lighter.
The equipment that you have on your person for survival, do you know how to start a fire? I can tell you right now, I know how to start a fire with water and a plastic bag. Water in a plastic bag.
Gotta have a little sunlight, but it's all good.
A little bit of sunlight, right? But you can start a fire like that. Yeah.
What I find is fascinating is it's so easy to get them. The little magnesium sticks with the striker.
Okay.
That's how I do it without matches.
Yeah, some of those are in survival kits too. So
and they're very durable and they don't go bad. And you can get one and throw it in your kit, and it's tiny. And the time comes, I need to make a fire.
Yes, sir.
Camping. I'm telling you, camping 101. Learn how to go camping. You have taken 75% of what we've talked about and compressed it down. Learn to go camping.
So it's my smarts. The information's out there. Go like Big Mike said, go get you a couple books on camping. Go camping, see what it feels like.
Learn the experience of it.
The experience of it. Yeah, go out there in the wilderness and see what that feels like.
Hell, you can do urban camping in your backyard.
Yeah, absolutely. Do it in your backyard.
Do it with your kids. Get your kids used to it. This is a thing we do. Have your kids go camping in the backyard with you. They'll have a blast. And then make it so that when you leave the house, you don't go back in the house. So whatever you forgot, you have to learn.
You have to learn how to acquire. Man,
that's right.
That's a good point. Yep. And you smart big brain people. Resources, FEMA, CDC, nuclear preparedness. There are numerous websites out there. There are government reports on survival and the effects of nuclear fallout, guidance on migration and mitigation strategies. There's a lot of information out there. We're bringing you the breadcrumbs, like I said before, and per usual, because that's our time. We thank you. We thank you for tuning in. You have an amazing week. Merry Christmas to all. Christmas is here. Can you believe it? Christmas is here. You ready for Christmas, Mike?
Always.
Yeah.
I'm always ready.
Yes.
Beautiful day.
Sir. Beautiful day. It's been a beautiful show. Great information. Gotta love it, man. This is the Final Boss. I'm Final. He's the sensei. And we're signing off. We'll see you again for episode number 44 this Tuesday. So tune in for that. Got some great information and things to put out as we extend this conversation on things that are happening in our world. Good night. God bless.